Hey, Thrive Tribe, Jaime Matthews here. I'm an empowerment coach and your host of Survive to Thrive Warrior Voices. I'm thrilled because we've actually published 18 episodes already. I really knew at this, didn't know really where it was going to go, what it was going to become, but I think we're off to a great start. So far we've had, in those 18 episodes, we've had trauma survivors, we've had a few authors, and we've had a few organizations that help trauma survivors on here talking about their services that they offer to survivors. So lots of great stuff that's going to be in store. So make sure that you subscribe to this channel because we are just getting started. But let's go back to these 18 episodes. Man, what a journey it has been. We've had a cancer survivor that is actually going through her cancer journey right now. And when we recorded, we did so at one of her chemo treatments. Man, she has an amazing story of resilience and empowerment. We've had a couple episodes with domestic violence survivors, ones that have escaped after 10, 20 years of marriage. We had Tina Talbot, which was a 3-part series where she escaped with her 7-year-old autistic nonverbal son, but hers became an extreme ending of kill or be killed. And she ended up ending the life of her abuser. And unfortunately and unfairly, in my opinion, she spent a few years in prison, even though at her arrest, she had so many injuries that the doctors even said we didn't know how she was alive. She had internal bleeding. She had all of her ribs were broken. Both of her lungs were partially collapsed. She had a hole in her spleen. She had a broken arm and had to have surgery. So immediately after her arrest, she was hospitalized in the ICU. So, but yet she was forced to go to prison. That part, I mean, let's dig into that a little bit. What does that tell survivors? You know, she did take a plea because when she was asked by her attorney, like what she wanted and where she wanted to go with this, did she want to go to trial? And her line was, "Get me back to my son as quick as possible." And in doing that, she ended up taking a plea deal. But even with that, the judge had the option to give her 0 to 24 months. And that judge gave her the max. And she said it was very, very clear. The judge said it was very, very clear that it was one of the most severe domestic violence situations she has ever heard of from being on the bench. But because someone had died, someone had to pay a price. Well, what about the 20 years that she lived in this abusive marriage? And when she tried to get help, she couldn't get any help. So what about those? What about that 20-year sentence that she already had? You know, and I was on TikTok or wherever, I was watching some reels. And recently there was a story in a different state where there was a lady driving with her child in the back seat. And this man in front of her um, started like a road rage situation. And he blocked her vehicle so she could not go anywhere, got out of his vehicle, started jumping on the hood of her car, banging on her windshield, threatening to kill her, came over to her driver's side window. Keep in mind, her child is in the back seat. Okay. Banging on it, getting ready to break that window, threatening to kill her. So she was carrying and she ended up shooting him and he died. But when she went to the court, the judge literally threw it out and said, "You cannot expect a mother to stay calm in a situation like that when her child is there," and that the judge felt she did what she had to do to protect her child. So talk to me about that. Leave me, some comments and tell me, like, where do you see the difference? Is it the state? Is it the mood of the judge? Is it the personality of the judge? Like, what is it? How is it that, which I think that judge made absolutely made the right decision. And that should have been thrown out because she was protecting her life and the life of her child. And he's damn straight about a mother will do whatever we got to do to protect our children. And we won't stay calm when we feel that their life is being threatened. So let me know in the comments what you think. If, with these domestic violence situations, when it comes to life and death, should the survivor or the victim be punished if they are forced to take the life of their abuser? And there was lots of evidence. There was a video, just all kinds of evidence pointing to the extreme violence that Tina Talbot went through. So if you have not watched that 3-part series, go back. You don't want to miss it. It is amazing. This happened in Waterford, Michigan back in 2018. So let me know your thoughts on that. But other topics that we talked about were toxic family relationships, where we've had a couple on here where they have had to cut ties with family, including parents. And this is like a very touchy subject. Um, it's just now becoming like a thing where we're giving permission to disconnect from anyone that is toxic to our lives, and that's including family. And I know even like when I grew up, like I was born and raised and you respect your parents and you do what they say and you 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 absolutely obey them, and not talking to them was like never an option, right? Like now we even see like during divorces where you've got custody cases and kids refusing to go see the other parent. Well, that wasn't allowed. That was not allowed. My parents were divorced when I was young, like kindergarten, and it was never an option back then. But now kids are given this option. And I'm just curious what you guys think about this new, I don't know what you want to call it, but just this new reality that this is our life and we deserve to be happy and we only have one life. And it's extremely empowering when you get to realize I get to pick and choose who I want in my life and who I don't, regardless of who they are. I know that I live by that. Fortunately, I get along great with my mother and my brother. I do have a brother that chooses not to talk to us, to the family. And I'm okay with that because you know what? If he doesn't want to be in my life, then he doesn't deserve a spot in my life. And he is missing out on all the great things that I could have contributed to his life. So I don't grieve that. I don't look at that as a sad or upsetting situation. Maybe I did at first, but now I look at it and say, anyone that chooses to not be in my life, bye bye. That's on you. And I'm not going to give them any of my energy to beg them or to get them to see things in a different way. Um, Hasta la vista, baby. Don't let the doors hit you in the ass, I guess. But yeah, I absolutely agree that we only have one life and we get to choose how we want to live it, which means we get to choose who and what we want in our life. I would very much encourage you listeners that if you are struggling with that right now, to do a lot of self reflection and ask yourself questions like, what is the worst case scenario if you do decide to cut ties with this toxic person? What opportunities would come to you if you did make that decision to cut that tie? Like peace is a huge one. When you're living in a state of chaos, it freaking plays a massive toll on you mentally and physically. So self-reflect and look at your life and who's all in it, what's in it, job, anything that is stealing your peace. Because tick tock, baby, you get one life. So start making those changes right now. Um, let's see, what else have we gone over in these 18 episodes? Oh, recently, oof, this one was a tough one. Sibling loss. So we had Angela on here, and she lost her young sister just a couple of years ago. So she's pretty fresh into her grieving journey, her grief journey. And I remember she had said that she didn't know if she was a survivor because she's still grieving. And I'm like, hell yeah, you are. You lived through it. You get to decide if you're a victim or if you're a survivor. And I see Angela as absolutely a survivor because you know what? One thing is she's real. She doesn't sugarcoat stuff. She is true with her feelings. She's honest about it, even the messy stuff. And so when she was talking, she talked a lot about how she was treated when her sister first passed away. And it was more or less like everybody checking in on the parents, asking her, hey, how's your mom doing? How's your dad holding up? But no one ever checked in on her. And that dialogue, that inner message that she was getting was that her grief didn't matter. And, and that really sucks. And I don't think that anyone intentionally does that, but we very much need to start talking more about sibling grief because siblings, like we discussed in the episode, are often together. One of them is with the sibling their entire life, right? So Angela was the older sister, but Andrea was with Angela her entire life from the day she was born until the day she passed. And in that time, they formed a very, very close relationship and bonded because often it was just the two of them. And so when a sibling loses their brother or their sister, it's often that they lose like their lifelong friend, their best friend. So, what ways can we start getting people to start recognizing that siblings do suffer as well, and they do grieve as well? Take a listen to her podcast, man. She does some awesome stuff, and she's talking about like her one aunt that really did acknowledge Angela's grief by sending letters or cards or checking in on her. And that message she was sending was, I see you, you have the right to grieve. But they did and do some really cool out of the box type things. Like Angela had, her sister would have turned 40 this year. So she decided to have a 40th birthday party for her sister. Even though her sister is not with us, it was the most magical thing that I've ever attended. She had photos out there of Andrea. She had all the family there. People were talking, sharing memories, and it was just an incredible thing. And I thought, why don't we do this more often? We started talking about how her aunt will do things like set her husband's coffee cup at the table, like during Christmas dinner, and some ashes of other people that she has lost, a necklace, whatever she has those in, and giving them a space and including them. And I think that's so beautiful. And like, listen, every wedding that I've gone to in the last couple of years, they're doing this, right? You walk in, they have either a table with some kind of representation of people that they have lost. They have pictures of grandma and grandpa. They're at the wedding and inviting them in to celebrate their love. And everybody loves that. And everybody seems to really enjoy that at weddings. So why stop there? Get out there. Have your lost loved one a freaking party. Do whatever you can to keep them close because I think when we grieve, that is the most terrifying part is when memories start to fade. Um, Being able to picture them and see them in your mind gets harder. start doing things, start thinking outside of the box on how to keep them close. And as you know, I've lost my daughter. I lost her, just back in 2023. And it has been it has been a roller coaster. And a lot of people come to me and say that my grief journey, because I'm very public about my grief journey, that I inspire them or they want to know like how I'm so strong during this. Well, I am one too, like Angela, I show the messy parts too. I don't know if strong is the correct word. I do what I have to do to survive. And sometimes that looks like I've got shit handled. And sometimes that looks like I'm a hot mess on the couch, overwhelmed, exhausted, uh, just watching TV to get my mind off things, like totally going through a whole season in a day. So it goes up and down. But speaking of grief, it's like for me, anyways, the first year I remember was absolutely brutal. Um, it it was like disbelief. It was like I cannot believe that this is happening, and it went by really really slow, but very very quick, all at the same time. But now that I'm going into my third year, I look back and go, that was the easiest year. The first year was the easiest year. It's strange, and but I guess I think I was either in shock. My mind um, wouldn't allow me to grieve all the, is that deep grief that you need to have in order to heal that soon after her death. It went into protective mode. I focused a lot on work and a lot on a Jeep group that I help run. And I just kind of threw myself into that distraction. Um, but for me, grief gets harder every year. And I'm sorry if you're on your grief journey and it has gotten started. To say that, I don't mean to scare you because I will tell you it is different for everybody. And I'm not saying it's going to get harder for you. I'm just saying that is what is happening to me. Um, but I was talking to my friend the other day and even said, you know, I I had the hardest time even remembering any memories with my daughter. She had a lot of trauma in her life, a lot of trauma. So she was sexually assaulted from the age of 8 to 15. Nobody knew about it until she came out with it when she was 15. By then, she had a lot of mental health issues. She was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, PTSD, and Stockholm syndrome, and um, and I guess that she had lost herself, and she had no self worth. She had a skewed vision of what love and relationships and what those were supposed to look like. So as she got a little older and was dating, she, well, let's say she didn't have the greatest choice of men. And she often looked for older men that I think she thought was going to take care of her and give her the white picket fence with lots of babies and lots of animals. And she could be that stay at home mom and, uh, raise her children. That's really what she wanted. But she ended up just finding men that were extremely abusive, that took advantage of her and her vulnerability. So when she passed, really all I could think of was all the times that I had her in and out of hospitals because she was suicidal. Um, Going through all of her like her cutting stage when she got older and was in these relationships. They introduced her to drugs, so she got into doing drugs as a way to numb herself and to run from the trauma that she has experienced, which that's when she got into that abusive relationship I mentioned earlier and was strangled and also had 55 marks on her body. during that domestic dispute. So when she passed, a lot of that is what I could remember was the trauma, all the trauma that she had went through. And I was very sad and um, I guess distraught over the fact that that was it. Like that was her life, that most of her life was being abused. Like, how unfair is that? She was such a wonderful, amazing, beautiful, funny, freaking sassy girl. And I was just so distraught that that was all taken from her. So I grieved what she lost, really. Like, and then also what, not just did I lose her, I lost her wedding that I would have been able to help. I lost being a grandma to her babies that she was going to have. Like I lost all of those things that will never happen. She was my only daughter. I do have two sons, but she was my only daughter. We all know daughters are a little special. So, anyways, it was just, it took till like my second year, that I was able to really start remembering the good and the things that we used to do together. We took trips together. I mean, the two of us were like two peas in a pod. First of all, she looked a lot like me. Like, I'll throw a picture up here right now. Like, really, look at that. That's my mini me right there. We went to lots of concerts. We did all kinds of fun things. And I was so grateful when my nervous system started to settle down a little bit and I was able to start remembering some of those things. But then with that, and this is kind of where I'm at right now, is now the pain is real. It's real that she's never coming back. When she first passed, I felt like there was lots of signs, um, where she was kind of popping in and saying, "Hey, mom, I'm still around." And I noticed that those signs started coming further and further apart, and I was devastated. So this year, I have really, I guess, done a lot of self reflection, and I decided that I wear a lot of hats. And, I'm a leader of the Jeep group. I run my coaching business. I also run a trauma survivor ambassador program. So I work with a lot of trauma survivors. I'm currently enrolled in MSU to become trauma informed certified. So I have a lot going on. But the one thing I realized, the one hat that is mine that I don't ever give any energy to is I am a grieving mother. And I am going to intentionally take care of that girl this year and intentionally do things to help that grieving mother survive to thrive. So, anyways, I guess I kind of just went down a rabbit hole with that. But um I do love giving, like I said, a lot of people look up to me in the sense of how I handle my grief. But I want to be very, very clear that it is messy at times. But because of my own coaching tools and my experience, that I have learned to navigate through this loss without going down some unnecessary rabbit holes like the what ifs, um, the anger, those kind of things. I refuse. I refuse to go down because I know that they absolutely lead to nowhere. And the only thing that they do is cause harm on me. So what if this? What if I would have done this? What if I would have picked up the phone here? What if I wish I would have given her, a longer hug the last time I saw her? Things like that. I can't change that. You can't change that. So I don't give my energy to that stuff. And when, when those things start like rearing their ugly head, I just rephrase it and just say, Jamie, that's not going to help. So don't go there. Um, and then I think of something different. I will distract the conversation, or not even, well, I do have conversations with myself a lot, but the thought process, I will distract it. And so that's really how I handled all those unnecessary rabbit holes, because I'm also a person of accountability. And, there were times where when my daughter was in active addiction, that I would tell her that, listen, like, I can't help you. I cannot give you any money, but the only help I can give you is I can help you help yourself. And like when she was ready to do that and wanted to go to rehab, you bet your ass I was there. I was there and got her enrolled into rehab. I went and visited her every chance I could get. I took her supplies, journals, things like that that she could write in while she was there. But that was a boundary that I had. And I know a lot of families, parents, um, spouses that have a loved one that is in active addiction. We fear so much of, what if we don't help them? What if we have that boundary and they pass away? While enabling them is not going to keep them alive either. They are completely in control of their life, and they will get help when they're ready. And there's nothing you can do, and you can't love them enough to get them to want to have help. So the best thing you can do is to protect your peace in your life. And so for me, that was not tough love, it was healthy love. Like, I love you. I will never abandon you. I will always answer my phone, but I can only help you help yourself. So when she passed, I thought about it and, like, well, would I have done anything differently? And the honest God answer is no, because I did what I had to do in the moment. And regardless of what those circumstances could have been, I would have never known. And I feel that I did everything in my power to help her without destroying myself in the process. And I'm okay with that. And that is good enough for me. I loved her immensely. I loved her on her darkest days. I held her when she cried. I, you know, I was always by her side. So if you find yourself in a similar situation where you have a loved one that is struggling, or an active addiction, or maybe in an abusive relationship that you can't talk them out of, um, I hear you and I see you. It is a very, very difficult situation to be in. I can tell you that I do offer a free virtual support group every other Wednesday, and you can find it under on my website under the events tab. It's called the Circle of Hope, because a lot of what I do now, my trauma survivor program and all of that, um, are in honor of my daughter Hope. And so it's called the Circle of Hope. And that would be a great opportunity for you to come on, and we can go into some of this a little bit deeper, and we can talk about what you're going through. And you would be surrounded by supportive survivors that can probably relate to what you're going through. It is a very safe environment. I keep it to a minimum of people just so everyone has an opportunity to feel heard and to feel supported. So back to those episodes. Another one I wanted to talk about was childhood trauma. So we had a couple of ladies on that talked about childhood trauma. And again, we had one really, really severe case. Her name was Rhonda, and she is an author of a book called Breaking Free. I Was Meant for More. And another great episode to listen to. That one is a bit longer. I believe it's almost 2 hours long, but man, is it worth it. She she went through some of the most extreme childhood abuse that you can possibly imagine. And yet she came out of it and she is thriving in her life. But as she got older and she was able to leave that abusive home, it didn't necessarily get easier, right? She still had hardships in life. Life still kept lifing her to death. She eventually got married and had children. And I don't want to tell you the whole story because I want you to go and watch that podcast. But more importantly, even maybe purchase her book. You can find it on Amazon. I know the links are on that episode in the description, but she was faced with a lot of turmoil and loss and grief. And she stays very focused on the fact that she knows that she was meant for more, which means everything that she has gone through, her loss, the abuse she went through, all of it, she never allowed it to define who she was or who she is. And that episode is super inspiring. And regardless of what kind of trauma you've gone through, this episode and that book will absolutely speak to you. So, again, this whole podcast is going to be just like this. It is probably not your most professional podcast. It is not going to be some Jocko or any of those kind of things, Mel Robbins. It is me. It is Jaime. I am real, I am raw, and I'm just authentic. And I just so badly want to help survivors out there. I want people to find themselves and find their power and start living life on their freaking terms. I want them to find ways to not allow what they've gone through to become who they are. So, again, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Leave me some comments. Talk about, some of the things that we've talked about today. Give me your perspective on, the different outcomes of when someone had to end a life because their life was in danger, and what your thoughts are on that. I get really passionate about trauma survivors and protecting them, and which I guess it'll lead me to this, and this is how I'll end it, is that I'm always looking for guests to be on this podcast, and I am not going to stop until this podcast grows and it's reaching thousands and thousands of survivors out there, because I'm hoping that there's one little nugget in an episode that they can take and run with and grow and heal from it. But one thing that I have run across, and this enrages me, it is difficult. It is difficult to find survivors that are willing to talk about it, that are willing to share their story. First, you have that barrier of shame or guilt. And even if they're beyond that, then there is other people that try to shame them into silence. And it blows my mind that this is happening. But, in my trauma survivor program, I have, I don't know the exact number, but maybe 12, 18 ambassadors. And a couple of them, as they started sharing their stories and as they came on the podcast, they started posting about trauma on their Facebook or their social media. They started getting some shit from family or from their past abuser or whoever. And it just like they try to make them small. And it's because it is putting a spotlight on who they are and what they did to this person. And the other day, I got a message that was somebody from, they saw an episode and it was a family member and they wanted to um, share their thoughts and insights with me, minimizing my trauma survivor, trying to twist and turn the story, trying to, and I'm like, wait a second. First of all, who the hell do you think you are? And I hope you're watching. Coming to me, coming at me, um, and trying to discredit anyone that was brave enough to share their stories and in honor of their story, in honor of their healing journey, and to help other trauma survivors. Like who in their right mind would want to interfere with that? Mind your own business. Stay in your lane. But I was nice and I was politically correct about it. But like in fact, they said I cut ties with that person years ago. But did you really? Because if you did, why are you worried about what they're doing 3 years later? So much so that you're going to message someone you don't know to try to insert your side of the story. But the compassionate part of me does want to say, listen, everybody has their perspective. And let's just say, for example, in a family dynamic, two people can have trauma, right? It can be different trauma, same situation. And I'm not here to discredit that person's their view, their grief, their trauma. Just by sharing and giving a space for someone to share about their trauma, it is not minimizing other trauma for other people that were involved in the story. So sit back, get in your lane. This was not about you. This is about trauma survivors that have the courage and the guts to talk about stories that are so painful and difficult only to help other survivors. That is a fucking warrior to me. So don't come at me and try to discredit anyone that was brave enough to do it. So sorry about that little rant, but it enrages me when people that have gone through so much trauma face that barrier of people trying to minimize them. And that can also show up, not just necessarily people reaching out to me, but I've seen it show up where they say, that's embarrassing our family. Take it down. What are you doing? You're acting like this or you're being like that. Just any type of comments like that will silence a survivor. And, but survivors that stay in silence is detrimental. So my goal in life is, again, to offer this safe space where they can thrive, like it says, survive to thrive, where they can thrive and they can grow. And you don't have to be healed to share your story. Has anyone ever actually healed? I think we heal throughout our whole life. And as we're healing one thing that has brought us pain, life will throw something else at us and we'll have to heal from that. But every time we do and we find strategies and techniques, the healing gets a little bit more manageable. I don't know manageable, but you feel more in control of your grief and your pain. So, for an example, back to the loss of my daughter, I remember everyone telling me, and not just people actually saying it, but reading it in books. I got these grief books because I wanted to learn what other people go through while, when they lose a child. And all I kept reading were things like, your life will never be the same. You will lose who you are. And I closed the book and I quit reading the books because you know what? I decided I'm in control of that. And just because this book, or most people will say, your life will never be the same again, doesn't mean that has to be my story. And is my life the same as it was before she passed? No. But it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like, my life has changed in the sense of I started a trauma survivor program. I have brought in dozens of survivors together, and we're building this platform of giving a safe space for other trauma survivors so they don't have to suffer in silence. I am doing a podcast now. So, yeah, my life has changed, but it doesn't always have to be in a bad way. So, I hope that makes sense. So, remember, if you are a trauma survivor, whether it's domestic violence, you've gone through a toxic childhood, or you have a toxic family environment, maybe you've been diagnosed with cancer or some other life altering illness, maybe you've been paralyzed, anything like that. Trauma is trauma. And I'm here to tell you, not only do not let other people minimize your trauma, don't you minimize your trauma. Your trauma matters. Your voice matters, and your healing matters. And you have permission to take up as much space as you need to feel what you need to feel so you can heal from what you need to heal from. But anyways, so we talked a lot today about really going over all the different episodes. I'm really looking forward to continuing this podcast and building on it. If you go to my website, www.reallifecoachingllc.com, there is a tab where you can apply to become a guest on Warrior Voices. I would love to hear your story and how you have turned trauma into triumph. This is a space to talk about not just what you went through, but how you healed and how you're thriving in life now so other people can learn from you and so they can have hope. Thank you again. I will talk to you soon and we'll see you on a future episode. Talk to you later.